Hey, folks. Zach Osterman here, IU Center, Indianapolis Star, Mike Niziolek, whiner-in-chief. Bloomington Herald Times. He doesn't whine at the Bloomington Herald Times, he just whines at me. First post-game podcast of the regular season. We're trying to do these as much as we can. Can't promise we will be able to do a live one every single basketball game, but trying to do these as much as we can live the way we have started doing for football. Tonight, Indiana opens with a win, 80-61 over SIU Edwardsville. Mackenzie Mgbako, a career-high 31 points. Umar Ballo had 15 and 6. Miles Rice had 11. Malik Renew had 15. Some good for Indiana. Mgbako, certainly. I think you like seeing so many different guys getting involved in the rebound game because that was there was a big problem last year, and it was a concern even at the beginning of this game tonight. On the other hand, turnover issues, still some stretches where it feels like Indiana doesn't really know exactly where it's going offensively. And you felt like a game that, they were maybe 10 to 12 minutes in, not very good defensively. And then from there, I thought they were pretty good defensively. A game they probably should have won by maybe 10, 15 more points. The offense just kind of kept going just a little too stagnant.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Woodson's focus was. He said he wasn't happy with the ball movement, wasn't happy with kind of the player movement, the offense. And I think one thing that he said was interesting was that he's where the offensive identity for this team is going to sort of manifest itself. I mean, Mackenzie really carried the team, particularly most of the first half, but then the second half, he had another kind of flurry of offense that kind of got them over the hump. It looked very much a work in progress, which, you'd expect from a roster that's so new together. But on the flip side of that, Mike Woodson thought that they had sort of the talent to maybe sort of overwhelm some of these lesser than teams that they were going to face. Yeah. Those are my words, not his, but he said blazing start, that, they needed to not have these kind of close games. And that didn't happen tonight. It was tied in the first half, 27-27. They pulled away. Every time they sort of got the lead to they had, I think, 1 20-point lead. It got back down to like
22.
It got back down to like 13 around. Yeah. And so it just didn't, the Kurt Sageni step on a guy's throat sort of thing. They didn't have that tonight. And they got to find that here quickly, I think, so you don't have a repeat of what happened in the non-conference schedule last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the concern. And there were moments when it looked like Indiana was about to do that, frankly, in both halves, but certainly the second half when, Indiana would kind of get, for example, Southern Illinois Edwardsville only didn't score in the last 2.5 minutes of the game. There were long stretches where they'd have one shot, one made field goal in 3 minutes, or no made field goals in 3 minutes. Indiana really struggled again for about basically kind of the first rotation back to the starters.
Well, I thought that derailed
defensively because of the offensive rebounding issues. And then after that, the defense I thought got a lot better. The problem was Indiana would stack together 4 or 5 good offensive possessions and then commit 2 turnovers, or they'd look like they were about to run away with it and then take a couple bad shots, commit a foul. SIU Edwardsville gets an and one. It just never quite grew out the way you thought it would.
And I'm not sure. I didn't get asked because look, it's a 19-point win, and some of that, he's going to kind of. I know what the answer is from Woodson. Why he took Mgbako out when he did in the first half. He scored 13 straight points, was on fire. Mm-hmm. And he took him out and then went to his entire bench, had 5 guys off the bench. And that was the lineup that sort of kickstarted SIU run. That could have probably been timed better. Look, I know you got to get all these guys minutes. You're experimenting with lineups. But I thought that was
you're trying to limit minutes for your starters a little bit.
Sure, but I thought there's a better time to get Mgbako and sort of go to that in the first half, because I think maybe if he stays in and they get another extended lead, 6-8 more points, then this game starts looking a lot different. You kind of break their will a little bit early because, SIU struggled shooting the ball all day. I mean, they're 35% from the field in the game, less than 20% from three-point range. But they still managed to hang around. They didn't even hit very many threes. They only hit 5 in the game. So I think that was sort of strange to me. Look, I know you've got to get some of these things on film. You're working through a lot of things. I think you got to pick your spots, because that was a problem last year too, especially early in the season, sort of with those deeper rotations, when to get guys in and when to take guys out.
Yeah, that's fair. And you do feel like they're almost kind of pre-planned a little bit in the first half sometimes, especially in
and that's what I'm going to they want to do that.
But where Indiana would rather limit minutes for starters, but in the first half, and then if they have to use them, then they're fresher for the second half. Some individuals, first of all, Mgbako, I mean, I think if you're an Indiana fan, you should be encouraged. 13 of 17 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3 is really good against anybody. Number one, I think it's encouraging because he was the guy that at the end of last season, you thought if Indiana keeps him around and he keeps making steps forward,
he had the highest ceiling.
He could be that kind of offensive player that, just will have bursts where we've seen this from, players like Johnny Davis in the Big Ten recently, Keegan Murray, where they just heat up for 5 minutes and suddenly they've scored 11 points. Like that first half stretch you're talking about where it wasn't just threes. I mean, he was, he had a steal and a score. Trey Galloway had a really good sort of skip-ahead pass for him that split 2 players, and he had a score. But I think the other encouraging thing about Mackenzie Mgbako, I didn't think he was perfect today on defense at all. He finishes the 4 fouls. 9 rebounds, though.
Well, much more engaged, too.
Is rebounding is obviously, it is a part of defense, and it is a function, every coach will tell you, of energy and engagement in the game. And, again, early on, frankly, Indiana was probably a little bit lackadaisical on the glass. And it felt like Mgbako was one of those. I'm toggling over here to the second half stats. It felt like Mgbako, so he only had 4 of those rebounds in the second half. The point is he split them up very evenly. I thought he did between the first and the second half. It wasn't like that all happened in one sort of brief segment of time. He was an active part of the solution to the rebounding problem. And again, this is one of those things where if we're still talking about the rebounding in a month as an issue, then you're allowed to point back at last season and say, why hasn't this gotten fixed? If this is just kind of an early season thing, this team's still figuring out roles and rotations and whatever. But by the time we get out of, they come out of Atlanta's or they come out of those first 2 Big Ten games in December, and they're a much more sort of settled, consistent rebounding team, I don't think you need to worry about it as much. But the thing is, especially if you're going to play some of the smaller lineups, and Indiana was playing them tonight. They had Malik Renew in at the 5 at times there. They had Umar Ballo on the floor without Renew at times there, especially in the second half. Then it's guys like Luke Goody and Mackenzie Mgbako that have got to fill that gap, rebounding the ball, and he did that really well.
Well, I think the play that stood out to me most for Mgbako was he hit a 3, and so they were struggling offensively. It was that stretch where SIU had tied at 27-27. They called timeout. Mgbako hits a 3. Gets a steal right at half court. I don't think it's a play he would have made last year. Mm-hmm. He, kind of very lackadaisical, going back down the floor, more kind of focused on his offense, worried about his shot, but he's really engaged, got there, right there, stole it, and then completed a 3-point play all in a matter of 17 seconds. And that was kind of a key stretch of the game. And so I think you just saw him, look back at his numbers last November. He was averaged 7 points, shot under 35%, shot terrible from 3-point range, and he was sort of very much that sort of hot and cold type of player, even though he played better in the second half. And to see this today, I think was encouraging just from the growth he showed as a freshman to now was important. As far as the lineups, yeah, I mean, when they played small, you mentioned kind of, I think on social media, tweeted it out that the rebounding was not there. Whenever Renew, I don't think they went to Ballo by himself at center until that end of the game.
Because Renew got into foul trouble, and so he had to play a decent stretch.
But the lineup they relied on that they went when they did go small was Renew at the center.
Yes, yeah,
multiple times.
I wouldn't call playing Ballo at the center. I would never classify that as playing small. I mean, there you're playing a 7. I think playing small is you're small at your 5 at your rim.
But that's what I'm saying. Renew was the 5.
Yeah,
and that was he played it multiple times during the game.
He did,
and they didn't do that to Ballo until the end of the game. So that was interesting because those lineups didn't particularly play very well, I thought. Obviously small sample size, but that was one of the weaker sort of looks that they gave to you.
Those are the ones that,
and this wasn't a big team that they were playing to.
Those are the ones that are going to have to basically outscore themselves a little bit. I mean, I don't think there's any way around that. Like Malik Renew is never going to be, and it's not his fault, but he's never going to be the rim protecting presence that Umar Ballo is. Like those lineups are kind of going to have to outscore themselves in terms of being more efficient offensively to make up for what they give up defensively. I thought the 3 guards, the 3 primary guards tonight, Trey Galloway, Miles Rice, Cannon Carlisle, I thought they each had interesting nights. Rice, 11 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, but also 5 turnovers. At times, clearly could not find the tempo that was best for this team to be playing at. Carlisle still has not scored, or I guess he scored in the the Tennessee game, but he didn't score tonight. But 6 assists, 3 rebounds, some really good engaged defense.
He had a block and a steal
that got Indiana, got the crowd into the game at a couple key points. And then Trey Galloway, Mike Woodson talked about, he's still kind of stretching his minutes out. 17 minutes. Woodson kind of pointed out he was playing for longer stretches in that. And 9 assists in just 17 minutes is just a crazy number. If you thought that what we saw from Trey Galloway last year, some of the assist numbers, some of the in-games through the single game stuff, the in-season improvement, if you thought that was just a function of Indiana not having another option, I think this is very encouraging, whether he starts or he comes off the bench. The idea that you've now got multiple players on this team that can create at a really high level out of those pick and roll sets that Mike Woodson wants.
Well, yeah, it was interesting. He didn't sort of commit to not starting Trey Galloway down the line. Like I thought that he left the door open. He's like, right now it's more of a function of, look, he's had this knee injury that's kept him out till October, essentially full go just when they got to sort of the actual meat of the practices. And so that's why he's coming off the bench. I kind of thought it was because they wanted Rice as the primary ball handler and Carlisle was a better fit sort of at the 2. But Galloway was probably the best guy running the offense, and especially in that second half. The last 10 minutes is when most of those assists came in. He hit Mackenzie Mgbako on a couple of cuts. Then I did the same thing with Ballo at the end.
Great PNR.
And so, I thought that was interesting.
I just called him
Mballo. I thought that was sort of interesting that when it came down to it, when they were trying to pull away, Galloway was running the point and running it well, probably better than Miles Rice did because he struggled a little bit, like you said. Wanted to go fast and got caught up.
He was trying to go fast.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where, like his teammates talked about this even in the preseason. They said sometimes he goes so fast that if you're not on it, if you're not sharp.
If you're not but they're not in sync yet, so they haven't played those games.
You kind of get lost. And I mean, it's sort of one of those where if you improve, like if Indiana allows like 2 fewer second chance buckets, Miles Rice converts one of those turnover possessions into a score instead because everything's moving at the right speed and in sync. And then, Oumar Ballo finishes a little better, then this is 88-61. And we're saying, that's
what I'm saying about the first half. If they get that just flurry of offense, they need to, I think they need to.
They look like a work in progress. They look like, I guess, frankly, to a certain extent, they look like they're supposed to look. It's November 6th. This is a half new team that is clearly trying, very much making an effort to be something more offensively in particular than what it was a year ago. That's not just going to happen in the span of a bunch of preseason practices.
Yes, but Woodson hasn't used it as an excuse this year. Last year, that was, I think, a big talking point that they had this all new roster. I think the talent level should outweigh that a little bit. I think that's what Woodson kind of feels, that they are just so much more talented. And that's no offense to SIU or whoever they're playing up in the coming weeks. In these non-conference games, most of them, talent alone, they should be 20 points better at least. And they struggled to even get to that point.
I think Ken Pom had him at 20. Ken Pom had him, I think it's not there anymore, but I think 24, 25. So, like, they if you want to say SIU Edwardsville covered according to Pom's projection.
And you want to be, I think, because last year that was the problem. They played all these close games. And so I don't think Woodson wants that. And I think that's why he was disappointed today, that you kind of felt like, the offense wasn't good. There was some stagnant, but we should be able to sort of overcome those issues, like execution issues, because we're so much more talented. Because they went out in the portal, they got 3 of the top 50 guys or whatever it is, and so it's like you should be able to do that. It's just first game, no reason to overreact, but I think that is the sense of that's where the disappointment I felt came from tonight from him, where it's like, look, this shouldn't be that hard.
No, I think it and like this is what I'm going to write later.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert, right? It is. Like at once, I feel like you could see what it's supposed to look like, and also how far Indiana is away from that. Yeah. And if they bridge that gap, I think they could be a really good team. Like that, you talk about the depth of talent on this roster. You've got multiple ball handlers. You've got multiple post scorers. You've got to. I mean, they don't get a ton out of it tonight, but you got a deep bench. On another night, Luke Goody makes a couple of those threes, and again, suddenly the score looks a little bit, that gets goosed out a little bit and looks a little bit more sort of normal, but it just like it's not there yet, and it's probably not supposed. It's fine that it's not there yet. To some extent, it's not supposed to be there yet. You shouldn't be playing your best basketball anywhere near this time of year. But you can. I thought you could pretty clearly see kind of the gap between where Indiana can be and where Indiana is tonight, even against an opponent like this. The last individual player I want to talk about, and then we'll kind of wrap up with final thoughts, is Oumar Ballo, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4 turnovers, 6 of 10 from the floor, 3 of 4 from the free throw line, which is going to be interesting given how often he's likely to get fouled this season. You talked about how he had a pretty quiet game, some mistakes, some times it felt like he kind of got pushed around a little bit. You and I were talking, not on the podcast, but before the press conferences. I thought it was interesting that maybe it was, and you said this too, maybe it was a function of kind of when he scores those points. I just thought it was interesting. He got on the floor with a guard that created a different type of look for him. Ballo at Arizona was great going at the rim. He was great in transition, and he was great when, and this was especially true out in the open floor, he got down and he sealed his man really fast. He was not super often like crazy effective when you slowed the game down into a half-court offense, and it was about like sort of pick and roll. And those were half-court sets, but it was different to what Indiana was trying to do, where they were posting him up and trying to get him on the block and post him up there, as opposed to with Galloway pulling him over for some side pick and rolls out around the 3-point line and getting him going at the rim, as opposed to saying you're going to go down back to the basket. Like
going downhill.
He's not Trace Jackson Davis, who was all post up footwork, like the strength to kind of power through a double team. Ballo can do some of those things, and it's not like he doesn't have footwork, but he's better when offensively he's going at the rim. He's looking for lobs. He's looking for catches. And I just thought it was interesting. He does have a quiet night overall. This is the sort of team that you feel like, maybe you should be a little bit cleaner against him. And let's be fair, 15.6 rebounds is perfectly fine.
But like you said, 6 of those points came in the last 2 minutes. But his last 4 shots.
What's interesting to me is basically like it looked a lot easier for him in those moments, because I think he had a guard in an offense. And again, maybe this goes back to the wider question. He had a guard in an offense that was creating looks that are more comfortable for the way he plays that position.
But I think for 26 minutes, he was almost a non-factor in the game. And I think in the first half, he looked like he got kind of pushed around, like you said. And that's discouraging, just because I think you thought he would be, he's what, fifth year guy?
5th year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and he's played a ton of games at a high level. I mean, just he wouldn't be a guy that I thought would maybe look so uneasy whether the system fit him or not.
I'd be more worried about the defensive rebounding, and at times it felt like he wasn't quite the factor you wanted him.
Yeah.
Now, let's not overreact. Like a lot of SIU's offensive rebounding success came in like a very confined period of time when he actually really wasn't on the floor. But still, these are the sorts of games where I
didn't watch the Marion game. You were at in the Tennessee game too. He looked sort of, I don't know, a little extra step every time he got the ball. But see, and maybe that's what you're speaking to. He's comfortable. You have to use him in a specific way to get him sort of going.
Yeah.
But that's on Mike Woodson to sort of do that when he's on the floor, right?
Right, and that's again where I think it's like it's okay if it's not all.
We want it now.
Yeah,
it needs to look perfect.
It's my money, and I need it now.
Yeah. Your column better be perfect, right? It's the first game, but it's got to be spot on. Uh-oh.
It's high pressure.
We've had like 4 or 5. Does anybody want to ask a question?
It is.
It's people just accidentally clicking on the thing. We've gone terribly astray.
Running around YouTube. 6 of 16 from 3, obviously not high volume, a perfectly fine number. Mike Woodson kind of said, he just kind of
he said it every time after every game. At some point, he's either going to be telling the truth or he's going to have lied quite a bit. He's like, we keep saying we shoot more in practice and we're shooting at a better percentage.
You'd be surprised if most nights Kanan Carlisle and Luke Goody combined to go 0-5.
And Luke Goody's had 1 in 3 games? Two late in that game? Yes, because he didn't have any in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So he's slow start.
That one, I think that those 2 will come around enough.
Yeah.
But 6 of 16 is, again, it's perfectly fine. The right guys are taking them. The right guys are hitting them. Rice hit one on the pull-up. You like to see Galloway. He hit one in the Marion game. He hits one in this game. You like to see the idea that maybe if you take him back down a little bit more toward the volume that he had 2 years ago when he shot so well, maybe that shot comes back a little bit. The other one that I think, not least because we've kind of now got, more of a sample size, they shot well from the free throw line in Tennessee. I don't remember what the Marion game number was, but they were 14 of 17 tonight. Miles Rice 4 of 4, Malik Renew 5 of 6, Umar Ballo 3 of 4.
Encouraging.
It's encouraging in the sense that we talk so much about the 3-point issues for this team, in recent years, but the free throws are where it's just like, man, these are free points.
Yeah.
And the free and the other thing too is, and this is one of those things that's hard to quantify, but I think it does matter to a sport like basketball, which is played in a confined arena that's all about atmosphere. When you miss an open three, the game keeps going. And so there's a little bit of but when you miss a free throw, the whole arena exhales and groans. You talked once last year about, I forget who it was, somebody struggling, and then, they get to the free throw line and the whole arena, you could hear it tense up. And it's just well, this isn't helping anyone. Anxiety is just.
That might have been the game where I think Indiana missed 11 in a row or something. Just something ridiculous.
I don't.
One game there.
I don't. But either way, the point is, making free throws it should be a simple, straightforward thing. But when you miss them,
so you're going to go outside and hit 10 of them straight before you do. Right.
Well, if I
no.
But there's no one out there. There's no one out there.
Soccer guy?
There's no one out there for me to disappoint.
I'll sit in the stands and go.
But the point is, it is one of those things that it affects atmosphere more than I think we talk about. And
you're burying the lead here. The biggest change in the atmosphere was these fries.
Oh yeah.
But the first fry is going to be everybody's going.
The first fry hit different. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because they thought they were getting a second fry. At some point, they're going to learn there's no second fry.
Have you ever had tap fries?
I have not. I've not been to
They're
tap
very
yet.
good. They dust them with paprika and I think garlic, salt, and then they an array of dips. We should go get some right now.
You don't like going out after?
Do you have a ticket? I have to go home.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go get some fries.
Can
we get free fries if we just show this? We go to every game?
I think it's
just
I
tickets.
think it's time to.
Just find a ticket hub.
I think it's time to shut this down. He's Mike Niziolek. I'm Zach Osterman again. Indiana 80, Southern Illinois Edwardsville 61. Hoosiers are 1-0.
Are we going live tomorrow?
They are back home. I don't know. Well, maybe we will. Maybe we'll go live tomorrow.
We're going to do our weekly. With 4 people watching.
We're going to do our live podcast or. We'll do it live. We're going to do our weekly podcast tomorrow in all likelihood, maybe Friday, but I think the goal is to do it tomorrow. Wrap up football last weekend. We might do a little bit more on this game and then obviously look ahead to the Michigan game. And then Mike Woodson's team is home again on Sunday against
We should have asked somebody to chime in and say, was there sound?
I just hoped that someone would. I mean, the microphones are on. We're using Bluetooth mics for the first time.
We should have asked.
So I guess
this would have been amazing if there's 23 minutes.
Respectfully, we're not going to do it again if we got it wrong. He's Mike Niziolek, Bloomington Herald Times. I'm Zach Osterman, Indianapolis Star. This has been Mind Your Banners postgame for Indiana 80, Southern Illinois Edwardsville 61. We will talk to you soon.